Is this the end of an era in Cleveland? This game feels like, from all accounts, that it could be the final game for Kevin Stefanski. Now, it's not definite yet. I do think that we are leaning in a direction of more than likely fired than not. If you ask me to put a percentage on it, I'd probably say we're at like 70%. I'm pretty sure Kevin's going to get fired at the end of the year. And we can talk about the reasons why I feel like that's probably justified for Kevin, based on the work that he's done over the last couple of years. But first, before we even get to why it is that he might be fired and what this game can or cannot do for him, we got to first talk about the work that Kevin Stefanski has done here in Cleveland in total. Because when somebody gets fired, when it's time to move on from a player or a coach or a GM, it's real easy to kind of fall into this mode where you just remember the things you don't appreciate about that person, that player, that coach, that general manager, and kind of forget about the whole body of work. Or the opposite, where a team lets go of a guy and fans start to romanticize all the things that they liked about that player or coach, while also forgetting that there's reasons that coach is being let go. And I think with Kevin, there's going to be the strong possibility of both things happening at the same time. There has always been a section of this fan base that has been hungry for stability, right? And with that hunger for stability, they will try to create stability with any coach that they see as good enough. And with Kevin, there's more than enough reason to believe that Kevin could have been good enough to hang on to as a head coach of the Cleveland Browns. And those folks are going to want to keep Kevin. They're going to be upset if Kevin gets fired, and they're going to romanticize a lot of the stuff that Kevin did right in his tenure as a Cleveland Browns head coach. But there is a flip side to this, and there is a side of this fan base that since Kevin has walked through that door, they have decided he doesn't meet their aesthetic need for leadership, and have been wanting him fired for 5 years through 2 Coach of the Year awards. And those folks will easily dismiss anything positive that Kevin Stefanski has done. I think the reality kind of walks in between those realities pretty cleanly, right? I think there is truth to the idea of Kevin's shortcomings as a head coach being ignored because of this franchise's fan base, and my personal desire for stability at head coach to mirror what we've seen in Baltimore, in Pittsburgh, and even at times Cincinnati. But I also think that people weren't doing that for no good reason. People didn't have Kevin kind of penciled to be the long-term coach of the Cleveland Browns for no good reason. I don't think Kevin won those 2 Coach of the Year awards by mistake. I think he is a good coach. I just think he's run into a wall at this point of his development, and there's really no clear path to get Kevin over that wall while also allowing him to be the head coach of the Cleveland Browns. You're just kind of at a pretty frustrating impasse with Kevin Stefanski. There's good there, there's potential for the future there, but there's also enough bad there that you simply can't ignore. We're going to have a full conversation about this, but first let me thank my sponsor, Sleeper. Real quick, just want to let you guys know Sleeper has a new offer here. They're offering a free $20 entry, no deposit required. And also, if you're a first-time user, you also will receive a 100% match on up to $100 when you use the promo code WORSTTAKE. Again, $20 free, no deposit required. Plus, first-time users also receive a 100% deposit match up to $100. Join Sleeper. See, if the Browns move on from Kevin Stefanski this week, I don't view Kevin's time here in Cleveland as a waste or a failure, in my opinion. That's the first time I've had this kind of conflicting opinion about a coach, right? Where it's like I view their entire body of work as a good thing in the long run for the Cleveland Browns because I think some legitimately good things happened during the 5-6 years that Kevin was here as the head coach. I think Kevin did a great job in establishing a level of continuity with the organization. I think that it's a good thing that you have players who are drafted here since 2020 who have not really experienced a head coaching change yet. Because like if you go back to my memory at the Cleveland Browns, especially as like a young child, there are just so many times where the Browns are just like new coach after every 2 years. Is it going to be a 3-4? Is it going to be a 4-3? Just doing those changes every other year. I think that Kevin being here for the last 5 years has done a net positive for the Cleveland Browns. I think him being able to kind of set that level of continuity was really good for defensive player development. I think you developed a lot of guys who are fringe cases in the league, like a Alex Wright, like a Isaiah McGuire or Ronnie Hickman, like guys from selections and ways of acquiring them that don't have a high hit rate that you are able to develop because you had that level of continuity, right? I think that the work that Kevin has done over the last 5 years, while I don't think he's the guy to continue that work, I think he has done enough to make the job easier for the next guy to take the job. And that's a success. Is it the success that we wanted when Kevin was hired? Is it the success that we thought that this team could reach in 2023? No. But is it enough success there to where I don't think it's necessary to take a wrecking ball and light everything on fire just to try to give somebody another opportunity? No, I don't think that's necessary, and I don't think that's the route that the Cleveland Browns should go, because I do think that there's a lot to salvage from the work that has been done here over the last 5 years as head coach. Now, you might listen to that and say, Quincy, why would you even want to fire him if you have so much respect for the level of work that Kevin has put in? I think that's simple. I think that's real simple, right? Kevin has done a good job at some parts of his job, but other critical game day parts to his job have just not been successful, and there's no getting around it, right? His offensive coordinator hires have really been underwhelming during his run here in Cleveland, right? Even a guy like the fact that we hold Alex Van Pelt in such high reverence here in Cleveland, I think is kind of a huge highlighter of the issue that Kevin has had hiring offensive coordinators, because in the grand scheme of things, like Alex Van Pelt's not a great offensive coordinator. He's never been a great offensive coordinator. Literally the New England Patriots lose him and Drake May takes a leap and looks like a completely different guy than he looked with Alex Van Pelt, right? But the fact that we have been pining for Alex Van Pelt over the last few years kind of just tells you the shit show the offense has been since 2020, since the end of the 2023 season, right? It's kind of one of those negative indicators that you can't ignore for much longer with Kevin, right? The Ken Dorsey hire, I don't know what went into that decision, who made the final choice there, but it does seem like that was a Kevin-oriented decision that didn't work out. The Tommy Rees hire isn't terrible, right? I think Tommy Rees has some things that he brings to the table as an offensive mind, although I don't think he's ready for a full role as an offensive coordinator. But I also think that like Tommy Rees and the run game stuff, like it got worse this year under Tommy Rees, and it was already bad when Tommy Rees got in here. And keep in mind, he was taken over from Ken Dorsey, who is historically bad at the run game stuff, right? Like it didn't get better from Ken Dorsey in the hands of Kevin Stefanski and Tommy Rees. That's insane to me. Like that the run game stuff from a structural standpoint, from an approach standpoint, has gotten worse. Like they were a better approach. They had a better approach to the run game last year than this year, despite the fact that they got better running backs in the room than they had last year. I think that's insane, right? And ultimately, I think Kevin has hit a wall in his development. See, ultimately, I think Kevin Stefanski has hit a wall in his development that can't be overcome by continuing to have him be the head coach of the Cleveland Browns. I'm skeptical of if Kevin taking another head coaching job right after he gets fired is actually what's best for him. I'm not really convinced that that's going to work out for Kevin, even though I do think that Kevin can be a good head coach eventually, because I think Kevin needs to take a year or two off to revamp himself as a offensive mind, to kind of break himself down and learn some new ways of approach on offense over the next couple of years. I think that would be what's best for him, because at times the Stefanski offense feels stuck in the past and just very stubborn at times. And I think that's something that he needs to figure out before he gets his next job, because these things will continue with him wherever his next job is. Like, Kevin can be a good coach, but I think he needs to overcome that part of his game. And I think in order to do that, he simply does not need to be a head coach for the next couple of years. I think it's kind of like a reverse Josh McDaniels situation, right? Josh McDaniels, for those who don't know, was always looked at as one of those hot shot offensive coordinators. He was like a genius. Bill Belichick called him a genius. But every time Josh McDaniels got a job as a head coach, it was apparent that, like, yeah, he's smart as an offensive coordinator, but he's a terrible manager when it comes to like the management aspects of the head coaching position. I think Kevin's the opposite. I think Kevin's a pretty strong manager at the head coach position, but he's not a great architect at the offensive coordinator spot. And either that means that Kevin needs to learn that over the next couple of years and find a way to get better, or he needs to learn to accept that that's not what his strength is and transition to being more of a John Harbaugh style coach. But the reality is, as long as he's the head coach of the Cleveland Browns, he's going to try to do the job that he was hired to do. And Kevin wasn't hired here to be John Harbaugh. Kevin was hired here to be the next Kyle Shanahan, right? And as long as he's here in Cleveland, that's going to be what he's going to try to do. That's just the nature of this. There's really no way of changing that dynamic with Kevin Stefanski. And I think that's why he ultimately has hit a wall here in Cleveland, and why, despite the fact that, he could be a good head coach in the future, you got to just kind of let it go. If you're Cleveland, trust that you have a strong enough foundation in your processes that you've built up over the next 5 years to find somebody who could fulfill the role to a decent level. And look, I know there's a lot of anxiety about a potential head coaching search, because all you hear is people tell you how shitty of a job the Browns' job is to take. But the reality is that it's not about how appealing the Browns' job is. It's about how thorough the Browns' process is to find a head coach, because the Browns' job is one of 32 jobs in the NFL, which means there are going to be qualified applicants who will be willing to take the job, because there's only so many of them, and there's only going to be so many of them open. There are more people, I believe, that can be a head coach that aren't head coaches in the NFL right now than there are going to be job openings. There will be a good hire out there to be had for the Cleveland Browns, and the Browns don't have to be the most high-profile, attractive job in the world to be able to land one of those people. They have to be thorough in their process, and they have to have a process that doesn't prioritize hype or trying to do all kind of other bullshit with your head coaching hire. It just has to be about finding somebody who's good with the job. But I do think that they are capable of making a good hire here, despite the fact that they might not hire somebody with a ton of hype behind their name. It's real easy to fall into the name trap when it comes to this stuff, and this is why I avoid at all costs giving you names to fall in love with when it comes to the head coaching search, because I believe that that just makes people hype up random names that they've heard of, and they're like, I like the sound of that name. Right. Or they watch like a good game that coordinator has called, and then they extrapolate way too much information from it. The reality is that the Browns are going to have to make a process-based decision. They're going to have to know why they're letting Kevin Stefanski go, and they're going to have to be able to answer with their hire how that guy solves the problem of that you fired Kevin Stefanski for. Right. I think that's all going to be very important. But I think it's also important for people to keep in mind that you're not having to start back at ground zero here. That this job and somebody taking this job, while it doesn't have the flash of some other positions, does have some benefits, right? A person taking over this job is going to appreciate the fact that there has not been a lot of head coaching turnover over the last couple of years, and that you are kind of getting a fresher start and not a already checked out locker room that's saying to themselves, oh, this is our third head coach in like 5 years. We're not going to give a fuck about this guy, right? Like, that's happened before in Cleveland Browns history. There is a chance to get this right. There is a chance to end the Kevin Stefanski era while still respecting the job that Kevin Stefanski has done. And that's kind of where I sit at today. I'm not excited that I think Kevin's going to get fired at the end of the year. But I am accepting that feels like the right thing to do at this point of Cleveland Browns history. It's an interesting place. I've never been at this place when the Browns have to make a move from head coach. Usually it's like Freddie Kitchens. I'm like, I can't wait to fucking get rid of this guy because he's obviously not good and he's done damage, right? Not really where I'm at. This is a bit more of a sorrow occasion for me. But let me know what you think in the comment section down below. Have a great day. Have an even better night. Peace.